back to In the Can. You know, there was a time in the pre-Yelp era when the collective id of the entire society, in this case of Los Angeles, wasn't considering themselves critics, and the reason being that criticism, whether it be of film, of food, or of any other discipline, was something to be practiced with utmost seriousness within the community of journalism, and we relied on these folks for information that we needed to make choices within our own lives, and it is a true benefit to all of us that that version of criticism is not dead. Laura Gabbert has made a film with Jonathan Gold, one of the great names within food criticism, in this case in the city of Los Angeles, where there is an endless array of delicious food to be consumed and understood. The film is City of Gold. Welcome, good morning to the two of you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, good morning, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
On being a part of the Sundance Film Festival.
Thanks.
Laura, if you would, talk first from your perspective about the idea to make this film and about working in conjunction with Jonathan.
You know, I wanted to make a film about Jonathan mostly because he really taught me to learn Los Angeles, love Los Angeles. I moved to LA in the mid-90s to go to graduate school and was reluctant about living there and held a lot of the stereotypes many people hold about the city. And I started reading Jonathan's writing. Someone gave me a copy of Counterintelligence, and I started traveling out to all these places in LA and really started to see the city differently, see it through his eyes, and started to really appreciate it. And then many years later, we ended up at the same school. Our kids ended up at the same school. And you know, we finally sat down and had a talk, and I asked him if he would do it, and after several coffees, he said yes.
Well, I can certainly relate to changing one's perception of Los Angeles. I was lucky fairly early on to have a friend take me to the farmer's market, and I just realized that the sort of the monolithic view of what Los Angeles is and what this beautiful community is with all of these different neighborhoods, and whether it be K-Town or just all the little nooks and crannies. Jonathan, welcome to Park City Television.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. From your perspective, talk about this many years of work that you've done, the dedication and commitment that you've shown to the delicious, beautiful food of Los Angeles, and then considering doing a documentary film like this.
I've been a restaurant critic in Los Angeles for 30 years now. And the thing I like about writing about it in Los Angeles, I was also the New York restaurant critic for Gourmet Magazine, is the ability to go into a place and experience a cuisine that you've never even heard of or contemplated, much less expected. That where in most cities you're happy to have like one new dish, in Los Angeles there could be a restaurant representing a cuisine of a part of China you couldn't have found on the map 2 days before you went there. And the cooking is usually in its purest form. It's almost down to the village level. And you get to sort of experience it. You get to immerse yourself in culture after culture after culture. And it's always exciting.
Laura, talk about what your thoughts were going into the project, and I imagine that there may have been many different sort of paradigms that you could have chosen with which to structure and hang the narrative upon, whether it be from the food side, from the journalism, from the ethics and science of what Jonathan has been doing these many years. Talk about that process and how you kind of decided the way in which you would unfold the story.
Well, I usually work in a verite style of filmmaking mostly, but a lot of it, you know, filmmaking is a collaboration, or documentary filmmaking is a real collaboration between the subject and filmmaker, and Jonathan set some ground rules from the very beginning. You know, I wasn't allowed to film him reviewing an actual restaurant, was one. And, you know, what I really wanted to do was capture, I knew the film was going to be about Jonathan and Los Angeles, so it was really about synthesizing those two things and bringing them together so that we really experienced Jonathan's POV of Los Angeles. So a lot of it was just spending time with Jonathan in his truck, driving around Los Angeles. We did a lot of just shooting a B-roll in the streets, different neighborhoods of Los Angeles, kind of figuring out the best way to capture it. is it's hard to photograph Los Angeles, you know, in one shot. Like you really need to figure out the kind of accumulation and juxtaposition of shots to make it feel like Jonathan's Los Angeles, or like
Right.
many people's Los Angeles, you know.
A wonderful point, and it seems to me in just our short time together and Jonathan being here that it feels like that's kind of your perspective has been, in as much as you are a part of a much larger group of people who, it's not a new thing really to be this word that we use kind of in the vernacular now, foodie, which I feel in some ways a little bit cheapens what the cultural experience can be of not just eating different types of food, but interacting and experiencing different types of people from a specific place in a village in China. Talk about that experience over the years.
Well, the thing that's been happening with food lately is, and I know I've said this, is that food is becoming or has become in a certain way the equivalent to what rock and roll may have been when we were younger. That people, especially young people, tend to like coalesce into tribes, right? There's like Team Vegan, and there's Team Nose to Tail, and there's Team Locavore, and there's Team Second Generation Asian, and there's definitely Team Taco, and they coincide, and sometimes they don't coincide, and and hardcore vegans are actually have a lot in common with the Nose to Tail people because they all have the goal of eating as few animals as possible, and it's an interesting way to look at the culture, I think.
Do you feel, or how do you feel about this change? And I was just in Los Angeles for Thanksgiving and went to a couple of spots in neighborhoods that I remember being a little bit different than they were 10 or 15 years ago. And I suppose this is a question for both of you. Talk about your impressions of, and I'll characterize it as sort of from the old days, the indigenous food cultures that have been there within ethnic communities, et cetera, to now when there are these sort of very crafted, wonderful, delicious, brilliant restaurants and eating places, even food trucks, of course. But it's a really different thing than that pure experience of people who are here cooking with their ingredients in their ways that they've done for a long time, and now things are much more crafted than they used to be.
Well, I think a lot of it is generational. I think the most interesting restaurants in Los Angeles right now, especially the ones with the younger chefs, are with chefs who have grown up within immigrant families, who have absorbed the foodways and the traditions, have gone off to cooking school and to apprentice in some of the finest restaurants in the world, and have come back and used the technique and used the knowledge that they gained in places like, you know, Paris and New York, and applied it to the food that they were brought up on. So at a place like Guerrilla Tacos, which, you know, opens the movie, the chef, Wes Avila, actually, you know, trained under Alain Ducasse, one of the most famous French chefs in the world, in Paris. And he worked at some, you know, fine dining restaurants in Los Angeles, and just decided that when it was time for him to strike out on his own, instead of trying to open a fine dining restaurant, he did it in a truck. And
Ludo Lefebvre, the same thing. I love that he's very now classically trained, but also a guy who's so excited about food and about the simplest thing,
And making it-
Yeah.
just
And making it really personal.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, Lefebvre worked was at a very high level in 3 of the greatest restaurants in France. I mean, possibly 3 of my favorites. And the idea that he's now taking that and he's putting it into like a former pizza parlor, and instead of doing sort of the elaborate, even the elaborate nouvelle cuisine dishes, that he's taking it to new leaves and to new levels, and he's taking as much care braising a single gorgeous cabbage leaf as he used to with sort of the, you know, elaborate terrines and such. It's exciting. There are a lot of different ways to cook food.
it may be kind of the lowest of the vernacular, but that's cool. Should we take a look at the clip?
Sure, great.
This is City of Gold.
Everybody in the world has an idea of what Los Angeles is. Everybody thinks they know what Los Angeles means, even if they've never been here. And if you live in Los Angeles, you're used to having your city explained to you by people who come in for a couple weeks, stay at a hotel in Beverly Hills, and take in what they can get to within 10 minutes in the rented car. The thing that people find hard to understand, I think, is sort of the magnitude of what's here. The huge number of multiple cultures that live in the city who come together in this beautiful and haphazard fashion. And the fault lines between them are sometimes where you find the most beautiful things.
Showing gorilla tacos. It's fine.
I just can't wait to have the time after this crazy film festival to see the entire film. You have premiere happening,
Yep, this morning at 11:30.
and that is
The
where?
library.
At the library. Fantastic.
yeah.
Everybody seems to be very excited
Great
about
venue.
the new version of the library
Yeah,
here in
yeah,
Park
yeah.
City.
It's great.
Congratulations
Thank
on
you so
being
much.
here at the festival. Thank you very much for coming to Park City
pleasure.
Television. My stomach is rumbling at the outcome of this conversation. We're so happy to meet
Thank you.
Jonathan, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Have a wonderful festival, and we will look forward to seeing you, hopefully, in Los Angeles.
Okay, great. Thanks.
The film is City of Gold. Today at the library. Make sure to get a ticket if you can. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more after this. Please stay tuned. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah.